I will drown my pain with Target brand s'mores cookies.
Ladies, gentlemen, and Harajam of all ages, the Diablo 4 release has been a big bit of a crazy wave. The game has been fun and there have been loads of changes, both positive and negative, over the couple of weeks that players have had access. And today, just a couple of hours ago, we had a live stream from a panel of developers to talk about not only the changes that we've had, but also some major changes that they're planning on giving us in the future, including things like massive buffs to Nightmare Dungeons in an effort to make players do them more. I keep saying that developers obviously wanted Nightmare Dungeons to be the farm method of the game, but in a game like this, players will always use the most efficient route to get what they want, which simply wasn't Nightmare Dungeons. And so there are some really big changes in the works to make this become the place to farm, for experience, for gear and legendaries, for glyph upgrades, all of that, which is actually awesome to see, and we'll go into more detail on that in a bit. On top of that, there is a massive patch in development right now, currently apparently like 13 pages of changes, which is a lot of changes. We don't have an exact date on it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's in the next week or two at the most, and one of the devs specifically in relation to the patch said the words, "It's time for the buffs." With every hotfix and minor patch until now, a lot of the changes we've had to our actual characters, to the classes, have been nerfed player power in various ways, but they seem pretty insistent that this upcoming major patch will contain a number of buffs, and hopefully that means that it will take a ton of just off-meta builds and make them actually become quite strong for every class that we have. They've talked about a fair amount of stuff in the almost hour-and-a-half stream that was the Campfire Chat, so let's just quickly blast through all the important points and talk about the really spicy stuff. First up, let's get a bit more in detail on the changes to Nightmare Dungeons that they've been talking about. They said that these are likely to happen at some point before Season 1, which just means at some point in the next 4 weeks or so. There are two particularly really big changes here, and these are obviously to make players actually treat Nightmare Dungeons as the way they are intended to be, which is the replayable, repeatable endgame farm mechanic. The first change is just a general increase to the experience gain in Nightmare Dungeons, so that they are just head and shoulders better than non-Nightmare Dungeons, and people don't really feel the need to run those on repeat. Right now, the maximum bonus that you can get from Nightmare Dungeon XP is 25% bonus from doing a sigil that has monsters 3 levels above you, as well as a small pop of experience at the very end of the dungeon too, depending on the sigil tier. Already, right now, the way that things are, Nightmare Dungeons are almost good enough experience to just run on repeat and not lose much efficiency, but they want to just make this clearly the ideal option so that you aren't even tempted to farm regular dungeons the way that we have been. On top of this, something even bigger than that, they are going to make it so that when you use a Nightmare Sigil to activate a Nightmare Dungeon, you actually get a waypoint effect on that dungeon so that you can click on it on your map to teleport there instantly. This would be an incredibly well received move, and as it would make going from one Nightmare Dungeon to the next just as fast as possible, it would actually make it in contention for resetting a non-Nightmare Dungeon, which again is exactly what they want it to do. They want it to be better than resetting normal dungeons. Past that, another big community topic that came up was the way that alts are treated and the way that Season 1 in mid to late July will be treated as far as two major things: Fog of War on the map and Altars of Lilith, which pretty much every player that I've seen talk about this were not looking forward to the concept of redoing all of this in any way. What they've explicitly stated within this stream then is that repeated Fog of War is going to be a thing of the past, changed at some point even before Season 1, so that even your alts will be able to share the map completion progress of your main character. As well, they've confirmed that for Season 1, you will at minimum be able to see every Altar of Lilith on your map that you collected on the Eternal server. Whether we will still need to actually collect the raw stats from them by clicking on them again is undecided, but what they've said is that you will get the Renown and are just already included preloaded onto new characters in Season 1, both from the map discovery and from collecting all the altars too, which means that you'll have the first 2 levels of Renown completed just as a base, which would just be a massive time saver for seasonal playthroughs. But that's not to say that Renown as a whole will stay. You will still have to do tons of side quests and dungeons to actually finish off your Renown in each region, each season, but it does cut out some of the more tedious portions of the Renown system, absolutely. As for that patch that I mentioned earlier, they also talked about a concept that players have brought up. Simply, why are you nerfing some things when you could just buff everything else to be on the same level of power? The simple answer that they gave us is that's just way more work to do. It would take way more effort, more time, and in all honesty, it would probably just create even further balance issues as a result. That said, the next big patch, the one they mentioned is coming up in the next week or two, more than likely will be containing a large number of buffs. A lot of attempts to make the less viable builds that classes currently have stronger, so that you can just sort of play however you want it and have it work for you and do what you want to do, which is really cool to hear. And obviously a game where every possible build is equally balanced would be awesome to have. It's just one hell of a difficult thing to actually accomplish, so I definitely wish them the best of luck with that, of course. They also took a stop to talk about world bosses and the recent changes. Last week there was a hotfix that raised every world boss in World Tier 4 to level 90 and made it so their weekly cash drops would require level 80 to actually open. Of course, I initially understood this as a bug, then there was a tweet from one of the developers at one point that said that it wasn't a bug, but they clarified on this stream that the level of the world bosses itself is not a bug, which is fair, but the level requirement on the grand cash reward specifically is a bug. And within the next couple of weeks, ideally, they will be patching this out so that it doesn't happen that way anymore. The devs also spent a fair bit of time talking about inventory tension, which is the technical term for people getting really annoyed at gems taking up way too much space in their bags and their stash. Nobody really enjoys this, so it is of course something that they're looking into, and what they've said is that they're looking into a sort of full massive change to gems as a concept where they will make them count as materials, going to your currency and materials tab instead of actually taking up space in your inventory, being like things like murmuring obols or veiled crystals, stuff like that, so that they no longer take up any space either in your inventory or your stash. Then you can just upgrade the gems and also insert them into your gear from the jeweler NPC. Sadly, the timeline on this change is looking at Season 2 right now, which is a minimum of 3 months away, but knowing that this is the plan makes me feel a fair bit better, as the current way that gems work definitely isn't ideal for anyone. On top of this, people who have been salvaging every single piece of gear possible may have actually found that there is a cap to the materials you can hold at one time, which is 10,000 of something like veiled crystals. They just straight up said there is no inherent need for this cap to exist, and so they're just going to raise it a bunch so that people won't be hitting it at any time soon. Simple as that. Past this, we had a nice bit of info of a change being made for hardcore players. There are a lot of annoyances with either server outages or disconnects causing your characters to die, and of course in hardcore that is permanent, so it really sucks, but they're going to be adding a function at some point closer to Season 2 where if you have a scroll of escape in your inventory and the system detects that you have a disconnect happening, it will automatically consume one of these scrolls to save your character's life. This sounds like a great change to me for anyone running a hardcore character. The worst way to die in a permanent death playthrough is through server issues or internet issues, so I'm definitely glad they're looking into this. As well, there were a bit of talks about resistances in the game, as in elemental resistances like poison or lightning resistance. We've talked about it before on the channel, as have many others. It feels like the resistance system in the game just doesn't work great in general, and definitely doesn't make sense as far as what gear says that it will do for your resistances. But right now they are aware that resistances just aren't doing much in the grand scheme of things, that resistances aren't really considered important by the player base, and they want to make them have more impact long term, so there are some changes that will be made to that part of the game in the future, though again, this is likely not something we will see in action until Season 2. Two final, more major things here then. One of them is class-specific uniques dropping for other classes. I play a Druid. I know other Druids have noticed this too. A ton of Barbarian uniques will just be dropping for Druids right now. The dev stated this is a very well-known issue, it is a bug, and it will be fixed before Season 1. It won't necessarily remove all opportunity for it to happen, but it will definitely reduce it significantly so that you have a higher chance of actually getting uniques for your class. Finally then is the question that the community has been asking about a looking for group function in the game. Quite simply, something that connects players who have something like a nightmare sigil they want to complete, but they want a group to do it with other players who are also looking for sigils to do. Diablo 4 is essentially an MMO light, not quite a full-on MMO, but with a lot of overlapping features with MMOs, and looking for group is quite a pretty standard affair for an MMO. They've said that they are looking into this as a concept, but they've not made any decisions on it as of yet. That's it really then, everyone. All the things I spent time talking about in the first official Campfire Chat stream. One other piece of info they said is that sometime early July they will have a proper developer update livestream that will go over a lot of new things coming, properly revealing Season 1 and also plans for future of Diablo 4. The big takeaways from this, in my opinion, are the fact that Nightmare Dungeons are going to be fully revamped to just be the best pure farming activity in the game, which is honestly what they should have been from the start, and it's really fantastic to hear. I really love that. And also the concept that in Season 1 and beyond that, we won't have to rediscover the Fog of War areas on the map or the Altars of Lilith. We'll just get a small bit of renown for each region automatically at the start. That bit is honestly just, it's so great. It's a relieving thing to hear. With that then, I hope you all enjoyed this roundup of the news that we got from the stream. I know you're all looking forward to see what this big patch is coming up at some point soon. After all, it's time for the buffs, to quote directly. And who doesn't love buffs? Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.